All right, well, it looks like we're filling in with some attendees. So thank you everybody who is currently joining. We'll give it a couple of minutes just to let everybody filter in.
Eric says hello. Okay.
Hello.
Cool names on
Yes.
What's everyone's favorite quarantine binge game? Whether it's TV show, podcast, snack.
Awesome. Yeah, guys, feel free to get in the chat if you want to start just doing a little bit of chatting and networking before we get started. I think we're still waiting on, we'll just let a couple more attendees filter in and give it another minute or two before we get started.
That's a Jen's question.
I think we should just start calling out people we recognize in the chat.
I think the best quarantine game is the screenshots and quickly throw into Photoshop and see what you can do with it.
Oh boy.
Well, that sounds like a fun game I haven't played.
Agreed. That sounds like a good time.
I'm expecting to see what you have here in a minute, Nick.
On the lines. Yeah.
You guys think another couple minutes or should we get started?
Kat, are you able to figure out the screen share?
I think I have the make host option available.
Okay.
Let me double check.
Or if you guys want to put in the chat where you all are calling in from, that would be cool. And if you're ID or UI UX.
So we can do some last minute updates to our presentation so we know who we're addressing.
There you go.
Awesome, look at all that.
Yeah, go
Oh my
Cleveland.
gosh.
Kathy.
From all over.
Sacramento.
Melbourne.
Melbourne, close to my hometown.
Excellent.
See that? Australia there, Nick.
Australia. What about the Kiwis? Do we have any Kiwis? Raise your hands.
Yeah. Yeah, no.
I like that.
Seattle, that's where I'm calling from. Wellington. Nice. Good job, Simon.
Hey, Cincinnati shout out.
Hey, Gabe.
Oh,
Oh,
I see
Jane.
Michigan, no comment.
Mexico.
I'm excited. That's exciting.
Ecuador. Nice.
Ecuador.
Ecuador, cool.
All right, I'm gonna go ahead and make Joanna the host. So does that allow you to share everything okay?
Yes, I can now. Let me quickly make it this presentation mode.
Perfect. Awesome, we got someone from Ecuador. That's amazing.
Yeah.
Okay.
All right.
If everybody can see my screen, yes?
Yes.
Okay. All right. Hi, everybody. Thank you for joining us. This is really exciting. This is our first time all 3 Ohio chapters are coming together to do a collaborative virtual event. So we are super excited to host this today. And you are now joining Blurred Lines, an intersection of ID, UI, and UX. So what is this? It is an exploration of the intersection between physical and virtual spaces, where industrial design meets experience design and interface design. And how do designers balance the need for elegant physical forms and digital interactions Where do we blur the lines between ID, UX, and UI? So we will explore all that today in this webinar. So I'll just do a quick itinerary. We're going to go through each chapter and just do a quick introduction. Then Jason is going to do a recap of the International Design Conference that actually was held virtually last week. Monica will go into a preview of the Women in Design Deep Dive, which will be the first week of October. And then we'll go through our 3 speakers and have a Q&A session. Okay, so this is where we're all from. IDSA Ohio Unites from Cleveland, Columbus, and Cincinnati. The global pandemic really pushed for IDSA to think of other ways of being able to connect with each other still, and that was through virtual events. And so we were seeing a lot of chapters collaborating with each other that don't normally collaborate before. And so the 3 chapters here were like, why don't we do something? And so here we are. Okay, so I am Joanna Celestina. Yet again, I am the chapter chair for Cleveland.
Hi, I'm Scott Urban, Vice Chair.
And Jason Simeon, Vice Chair.
And I'm Kristen. I'm the Outreach Coordinator, and I'm in charge of Student Relations.
Awesome. Yay, Columbus chapter. I am the Vice Chair of the Columbus chapter and working alongside the lovely Romina.
Hi, I am Romina Barrera, and I am Vice Chair.
Awesome, and representing Cincinnati, I am the chapter chair, and our vice chair Rance was not able to join us this evening, but we also have our secretary treasurer here as well. So Alex, go ahead.
Hi everyone, Alex Maggio, secretary treasurer for the Cincinnati chapter.
And I just wanted to do a quick shout out. This team has been working so hard over the past three to 4 months. We've been sacrificing our lunch hours, volunteering our free time, whatever we could, to really do some Zoom calls. Shout out to Kat for scheduling our weekly meetings, for Monica for suggesting and setting up the Miro board. We found that to be a great tool for brainstorming ideas. And I just want to quickly go through Cleveland. We were in charge of all the social collateral, from graphics to marketing, Eventbrite, and some of the presentations. Columbus, yet again, they really did a great job of connecting and finding speakers, setting up the Miro board, and Monica will be doing the recap or the preview for the Women in Design. And Cincinnati, thanks so much, Kat, for setting up all these Zoom meetings and for setting up this webinar, and also finding one of our speakers as well. But I have to say, we've really done a great job as a team, and found new ways of connecting virtually. So, okay. Jason, if you wanted to go ahead and go for the recap for the International Design Conference.
Okay, do we want to introduce the speakers, or is that the break?
That'll be after, yes. We can.
Okay, sounds good.
Great.
I just need to.
Joanna, you are host, so you'll need to pass the host along to him, I believe.
Okay. Okay, Jason, you should be okay now.
Okay. All right. So, hello everyone. I'm Jason Simeon. I just wanted to take just a moment to just acknowledge the context in which the IDC was created this year. Because if there's one thing I think all of us on this call and on this webinar can agree to, is that 2020 has been a year. And it means different things to different people, right? We've seen our world in many ways change, whether it's through the lens of climate change or horrific forest fires and crazy tropical storms that are battering the coasts. We've seen a lot of changes here, and we, of course, can't get through this without acknowledging the global pandemic that has also gripped our world at large. really redefining a lot of the social structures that we have come to know as a norm. And also obviously bringing with it a number of different ramifications. And with that, some of it is economic turmoil, really on a macroeconomic scale, right? We've all seen this. I'm sure a lot of people, even on this call, are in some way, shape, or form affected by what has happened in the world today, certainly economically, but also through that global pandemic. And of course, we can't ignore the social awakening that we've all seen as a society, as a human race, where we have literally unearthed hundreds of years of social biases and injustice that are really coming to light now, and we're really rewiring a lot of those circuits, all for the right reasons. So this is the context, really, that the IDC was created this year. This was something that a lot of people will look at and say, wow, these are a lot of challenges. But my hat's off to IDSA for really taking this on and really heading it, just taking it head on as opposed to really ducking any of these issues. And really recognizing that this is an opportunity. These are opportunities to use the tools that we use every day as designers to really speak into these issues in one way, shape, or form. And while we couldn't bring everyone together as a society this year for a week to go through all the amazing content that was put together, it was an opportunity to bring a week together into 24 hours. So, and that's exactly what IDSA did. They really looked at this and said, hey, how can we deliver something truly special, something truly unique? And so was born the 24-hour live stream. For the first time, IDSA has put on a fully virtual conference for its IDC. And if you went to it, you might actually have come away from it actually thinking it was probably one of the best they've ever done. If you missed it, by the numbers, it was pretty impressive. We had 6 themed learning tracks that were presented by 4 amazing MCs that kept us all on the rails. There was 21 amazing presenters, 41 breakout session panelists and workshop participants. There were 6 featured students, 1 for each of the themed tracks, 8 countries represented just by the presenters alone. And over 40 hours of content that were jammed into 24 nonstop hours of live broadcasts. And really, you add all that up and it was one amazing virtual experience. So if you missed it, we had Spencer, Christine, Verena, and G Back, all serving as MCs of the 6 tracks. They did an amazing job, brought a lot of humor, and really kind of kept everyone honest on timing and everything there. We had amazing keynotes from some of the design leaders and industry leaders that we all look up to. Our global director of innovation from Puma. We had folks representing Microsoft, Aether Clothing, Tulane University. I mean, it was incredible. And on top of that, we had 21 individual presenters presenting all on a various range of topics, also representing lots of different global world areas. Again, lots of amazing, outstanding design leaders here. And then on top of that, we had all the breakout sessions, the panel discussions that were very engaging, and the really great workshops that were sharing lots of industry information that we can all take with us. So great stuff that was happening there. And of course, we can't forget the 6 different students that were also represented as well. Congrats, big congrats to them. For each of the learning tracks, we had 1 student featured, representing the North Carolina State University, Purdue, DAP in Cincinnati, MIT, University of Oregon, Thomas Jefferson University. Wonderful work that being done there. So, yeah, 2020. Of course, we can't forget our fan favorite IDEA awards. which obviously we had to do a virtual presentation of those this year, but the IDEA Award Gallery is live on idsa.org. So yeah, 2020, it's been a year, but it hasn't all been bad. As I transition here over to Monica, who's going to be talking about the Women in Design event, just want to remind everyone that there's more information here about this event from idsa.org. My understanding is the IDC content will soon be made available, and the IDEA Award Gallery is live, so check it out. Lots of great stuff there. Over to you, Monica.
Awesome. Yeah, thank you, Jason. Yeah, I know Corey just responded in the chat too. You can shoot her an email directly. She's our wonderful coordinator as part of IDSA National. So she has the answers to all the questions. Corey, I know I can put you on the spot like that because I know you can back it up. She's fantastic to work with. So yeah, so we just wanted to share a little bit of the Women in Design. So if you're not familiar with IDSA in general, we have, you know, IDSA as a national chapter. They have different events that they put on every year. They do 4 kind of big events. They do the IDC as their really big national chapter event, national event throughout the year, and then they do 4 deep dives, 3 or 4 deep dives, 3 deep dives now. Which one of is the Women in Design. They also do a deep dive in the medical space, and then they also do a deep dive in sustainability. So last year they had Women in Design in San Francisco. It was a phenomenal event. Absolutely loved it. I think it was about 150 different professionals, primarily women. There were men there, a couple, token men, no. But it was really great to actually have just a network of people that have had, you know, similarities in their professional careers or differences in, you know, the types of fields that they're working in. And I think it was probably one of my most fun events to actually attend in person because it was just surrounded with so many vibrant, passionate people that were all just excited to kind of be together and share with each other, you know, their individual journeys and how we can, you know, make space for everybody in the room. So this year it is, due to COVID, going to go digital, as many things in our lives have gone. It will be October 6th and 7th, so a 2-day event. Like I said, it's really meant to kind of gather and build recognition between different women in the industry and people who identify as that in the industry. So it's really open to everybody. It just has more of a focus on that, as most often the ID industry has been more male dominated. So it's really just kind of creating space so that we can kind of share similarities and kind of, you know, see what else everybody's kind of getting into. It is inclusive to industrial design, UX, service design. We had some phenomenal speakers last year. I think, I forget what her name was off the top of my head, but she identified as, I think, like unicorn extraordinaire. And we're just like, what? Yeah, you know, why not have such a magical title? What's holding you back, you know? So we will have different attendees and workshops, different lecturers that will come in to kind of, again, share space on what's new in the industry and how we can all learn from each other. And then also this year, they are offering it at a very discounted rate and a choose your own rate option. So you have the opportunity to do 25, 50, 75, or 100 for the ticket. And then you'll have full access to the event. And I believe you'll also have access to all of the recordings of anything should you miss it, or, you know, have to like pop into like a work meeting or something. So you can take some time to watch it on your own time as well. And just kind of a high level overview of the 2 days. So it will start from 10:30 to 5 on Tuesday, October 6th, and on Wednesday, do 10:30 to 3:15. There'll be a little pre-conference interactive discussion. Myself and Corey Rowley, who is the DCR over this region, will be emceeing the event, and then we'll have experts within the design research space. Liz Sanders, if you don't know her, you will know her after this. Kay Kim, working at Starbucks. We have Lindsay Maxwell from Teague. We have different leadership workshops. Natalie, she works for Park and Grow. and Grow in USA there. They're fantastic professional development business. If you don't know the Tanisha Robertson, you will also after this event. She kind of had a different route and created her own business. Very exciting. You'll see that. Leah McDougall in research. She started her own research firm a few years ago and has been taking over that industry of Columbus. Great partner to work with as well. And just so many more. So we'll have fun interactive workshops and different speakers and maybe a little pre-cocktail mixer showcase webinar too. So if you can, we would love to have you there. It is October 6th and 7th coming right up. You can sign up through IDSA online or follow any one of us and we'll be posting about it also. One last thing, we will be dropping all of these links into the chat for everybody so that they have access throughout this event. And now I think we will get back to our main, what you guys have all signed up for, which is the Blurred Lines event. So first up, Kat, do you want to, or Joanna, who is introduced?
Yeah, I'll hop in. So I just want to say thank you so much to everybody who has taken the time out of their evenings to be with us tonight. As you can see, we're just overflowing with enthusiasm and excitement for the work that we do together as an organization and as designers across the country, and the support from other chapters and other events as well is what makes it possible for us to do the work that we do. So we want to just take the opportunity to shout out some of the other amazing things in the community. So thanks for taking the time to listen to that. But now we are just so excited to share some of our amazing speakers with you tonight. We are going to be starting out with Gen Goodwin, but before we get started, I actually wanted to take a moment to introduce Jon. Jon will be filling in for Nicole this evening. Nicole was not able to join us due to an emergency, but Jon is an integral part of her team and he will be able to speak to Level's work with Tempo. So you can look forward to the same great content from him as well. But just starting off, I'll tell you a couple quick tidbits about Jen and then I'll let her speak to her amazing work. But she is an Associate Director of UX Strategy at IBM iX in Columbus. She is our representative Ohio speaker, so we are delighted to have her on board. And without any other further ado, I will hand it over to her. So let's make sure we've got sharing set up. All right. Monica, you may still be the host. Do you mind passing it along?
I think I've got it, guys.
All right, and feel free, folks, to hop in the chat if you want to pipe up, ask questions, just discuss as we go through. But take it away, Jen.
Cool. Well, thank you all for having me so much. My name is Jen. I think I know a few of you. Hopefully I'll know more of you by the end of the evening. I am an Associate Director of UX Strategy, UX Lead, UX Researcher. I go by a lot of different things at IBM, and so we'll just say UX at IBM iX. I'm going to talk a lot about that, specifically the titles and all of the different jumble of titles that exist out there in the UX world. So we'll get into that shortly here. So my journey into UX, I think everyone's journey into UX is kind of a little bit different and unique, which is why I love to kind of share mine, and I would love to hear yours if you're interested in UX or already doing UX or what have you. I started my journey as a student at Ohio State. My official degree on the books is a Bachelor of Science in Visual Communication Design. That is notably not a UX degree. I know there's a lot of UX degrees out there. I'm sure they are great, but that is not the path that I have taken specifically. But what that meant for me, a Bachelor of Science in Visual Communication Design, was really learning foundational skills in a variety of design career tracks, specifically more like what would be considered graphic design back in the day. So I had a class in motion graphics, I had a class in information design, infographics, learned branding, logo design, poster design, kind of the whole gamut, and then a little bit of what would be considered like UI design today as well, UX research as well. So it's kind of like a buffet table of everything that you could possibly consider as a career in graphic design, UX design, UI design, etc. So following that, I took a job right out of school at a company called Design Central, represent. Monica works there, as well as Corey, who she mentioned, and a few others I think I see in the Zoom meeting. So yay, Design Central. I had a fantastic experience working at Design Central. My official role there was a UX designer, and then later I advanced to a senior UX designer. And what that meant was that I was one of 2 UXers in a world of industrial designers, which was a really cool experience right out of school because it was a small firm at the time of about 30 people, and I did everything that somebody with a visual communication degree would do in a world of industrial designers. So that included everything from, where does the logo go on this microwave to helping to do some ID sketching, early concepts, brainstorming. I did ethnographic research. I did UI design. I even wrote some functional requirements to support the UI design that I made. So again, a great opportunity for me to kind of see the entire gamut of all things UX and experience those in a real practical environment in the real world. So then I moved to Resource Emirati, which was a digital marketing and sort of more ad-focused digital agency at the time in Columbus. My official roles there, I actually started as a really weird title, documentation specialist, and then I advanced to a UX strategist and then a senior UX strategist. There I was kind of a UXer in a world of what they called creatives, which was kind of a very different end of the spectrum. So I went from Design Central, which was a very industrial design, product design kind of focused company, to Resource Emirati, which was very digital everything, including marketing, advertising campaigns, and all of that. I went from being the one to say, what about the digital side of this, to all of a sudden being the one that was well, what about the physical side of this? Because I was kind of pulling from all of that fantastic practical experience I already had in the industrial design world. And then Resource Emirati was acquired by IBM around 2017. And I have been there ever since. And my titles there are UX Lead, Associate Director of UX Strategy. We could kind of make up our own titles a little bit. So I could go by, I think it was Unicorn Extraordinaire was mentioned. I might have to steal that one. But what this really means is that I am doing UX at a global consulting company. So that means that what I do day to day kind of depends on the needs of the client and the needs of the project. And so I really kind of, stretch my boundaries and get outside of my comfort zone on a daily basis. I got to work with huge clients, global clients, which has been a really fantastic opportunity as well. So that's about me, but I've been using this term UX a lot, but what does that actually mean? And unfortunately, I don't have a crisp, clear answer, but I'll do my best to articulate my answer to it, because it always depends who's asking what UX is. It changes all the time, and yes, it's confusing. My understanding of UX and how I act as a UX strategist on a project is building empathy for all the humans who use a product or interact with the brand, and spreading that empathy by advocating for them in places where decisions are being made. So I'm going to break that down a little bit. So building empathy, that's all about user research, understanding what people want, what their pain points are, what their motivators are, and bringing that to the table. And then for all the humans who use a product or interact with the brand, when I say all the humans, a lot of times, companies tend to focus on, their one core customer, but they don't really consider all the different facets of, maybe there's a call center representative who is the actual, one of the end users of a product, or maybe there's different types of humans who maybe do not have, are differently abled, or have some kind of, cognitive disability, physical disability that sort of prevents them from being able to use that interface, product, whatever it is, in the same way as other people. So really understanding the full gamut of who is using a product or interacting with a brand. And then the last piece, spreading that empathy by advocating for them. There are a lot of, what used to be physical conference rooms filled with people who are making decisions about what the next version of a product should be, or the next vision for the brand should be. And they may or may not be deeply in touch with who the actual humans are that are going to be using that. So my role is to kind of understand what they do, what the end users want and think, and kind of be the advocate for them in those rooms. So hopefully that makes sense and clarifies it somewhat, but like I said earlier, it always depends who's asking, and it changes all the time. So that's my definition for now. So in terms of what I actually do, to answer the meme that I put on the earlier page from Office Space, here is a wide gamut of different sort of UX tasks or activities that I have been asked to do in various UX roles over the years. I've tried to kind of, well, this is overwhelming on purpose because I do a lot of different things in my role. And I've tried to kind of make it a little clearer by making some of the things that are smaller, the things that I do less often, either because I don't particularly like to do them, the ask doesn't come up as often, whatever the reason, to the larger circles, which are things that I do a lot more often, especially these days. And then I tried to roughly categorize these things because they fall into a lot of different, you know, groupings, I guess, of skill sets. So what I would say is, we all find our niche sort of over time, and you don't have to do everything. There are some of these things that I like to do a lot more than others. There are some of these things that I like to do a lot less than others. But when it all comes down to it, you don't have to do everything on the slide. There are all sorts of things that would be considered UX that aren't even on this slide. And you can focus on just one of these circles and become like, kick butt at it, do it all the time and be the expert at it, or you can, you know, pick a couple of them. It's all kind of up to you and how you want to move and shape your career. So you learn as you go. I didn't come out of school knowing how to do all of those things. Here's what that kind of looked like for me. So these are going to kind of roughly animate on in terms of my timeline of when I learned them in my career. And I'm sure, you know, in 5 years or so, there'll be 3 other circles, 5 other circles of new things that aren't even activities that are considered UX yet. Maybe one of those will be like virtual workshop experience design or something coming out of this whole COVID thing. We don't really know, which for me is kind of exciting. And if it weren't already complicated enough, as I alluded to on my first slide, there are all of the titles that exist in the UX world. So here is just like, I just went onto LinkedIn into the jobs section and I started scrolling and I saw all sorts of different things. This is some of them. You've probably seen a lot of these out in the world, but I'm going to quickly just cross that out and say it is always important if you are going after a UX role to ask what the role actually entails. You're not being ignorant. All of us have asked it, and it's important because this term is so blurry and ambiguous and murky right now. You want to make sure that if you're applying for a UX job that you know what's going to be expected of you and that it interests you. And if you can't do all of those things day one, that's okay too, because it's okay to learn on the job. Just be honest about what you know and you don't know, and take it from there. So these titles, the lines are often blurred between them. See what I did there? Monica, the title of the conference. So it looks a little more like this in the practical sense. You have a lot of these different roles. Right now, I happen to kind of identify here, but I haven't always been there. I think I started my career probably over more in that visual designer, UI designer circle. Might have dabbled a little bit in industrial design when I was at Design Central, but you kind of move around and that's okay. That's kind of how the industry is, and that's how the job market is too. And there's things on here like voice design and what did I have over here on the virtual UX design. Maybe these are kind of like the new things that are coming, the new titles that'll be coming out. So stay nimble, stay curious, and don't let it intimidate you. Just get out there. So yeah, be open-minded, try new things. There's the saying, fake it till you make it. I wouldn't say that this is a case of that. You should find good mentors to guide you in any kind of new thing that you try. When I say mentors, I don't necessarily mean those have to be people. It's great if they are people and they can give you that like hands-on one-to-one mentorship and guide your career and advise you. I've had the privilege to have some wonderful mentors over the years who were people, but there's also mentors like Brene Brown or podcasters or books. If you haven't gotten Don't Make Me Think yet, that's like a real quick UX primer read, a great way to kind of guide you and shape you so you don't have to fake it. So let's talk about another ambiguity, product design. I heard this term, I've used this term, I think I even said this term a few minutes ago, but I'll blur it out here just to be on theme. Product design is like a huge spectrum of different things and includes physical products and digital products and everything in between. I used to say that when I was fresh out of Design Central that I came from a product design firm, but then people would give me these weird like looks because then I was in kind of more of a digital world and everyone was like, what do you mean by that? So then I learned to kind of call it more industrial design, but Design Central does a lot of different things too. So this term product design is one of these ambiguities that I kind of love and hate. But let's break it down a little bit more. So there are some projects that look like this. They're a physical product or a digital product, and the lines are very clean. It's a packaging or a backpack or a chair, and it's clearly a physical product. A digital product, it's software, it's a mobile app, it's a website, it's like squarely in that quadrant. And the timelines of these types of projects look very different. A physical product, you're kind of tied to this, manufacturing life cycle and the expense that goes into manufacturing and getting it right the first time. So it might be that you work on the design of a product for, 1 year or even 2 years until it actually goes into market and launches. And then once it goes live, there's the effort, of course, of learning and then starting on working on that version 2 of it. And then there's the digital product, which looks quite different. You might have a first release of it, an MVP, and then you learn from that first release of sort of a subset of features, and then you add things in release 2 and change some things that didn't work so well in release 1. Then you learn and you launch release 3 and release 4 and 5 and so on, and you keep building onto this product over time. But it's a lot quicker. You have these really fast iterations where it's a month, or sometimes in startup world it's like a couple of weeks, and they're just launching new code all the time because you're not tied to that manufacturing and the expense of getting the tooling right and all of that. So it's a very different kind of project. And then more and more these days, projects start to look a lot more like this. I'm going to call them a blended project, or I'm sorry, a blended product, where you have a physical product and a digital product, and there's kind of components of both, and they're kind of connected to one another. So just a few examples of what that might look like, just kind of in the margins here. We're quickly leaving a world, I think, where it's only a digital product or only a physical product. They're just becoming so hyper connected, and like the Internet of Things and all of that, it's really kind of hard to separate them. We're getting more and more of these kind of blended, blurred products. And the timeline and what it feels like as a designer to work on those kinds of products is really blended too. You have to come up with a unified product and research strategy at the beginning. You might have a team whose job is to work on the physical product design, and then a separate team whose job it is to work on the digital product design. And you have these kind of cross collaborations between the two. Those may not even be the same company. Maybe you have one company who's working on physical product and another company who's working on the digital product. And it's really important you keep those teams really close together. Or sometimes at really small companies, startups, etc., you might have a blended team that's doing both the physical products as well as the digital product side of things. So now let's talk about who works on like a product team and what that looks like and how it's different between physical and digital and kind of blended products. So this is a chart. I did not make this chart. I'm not going to claim it. I did draw it in PowerPoint, but it's pretty simple. So I've seen it a number of times and I've sketched it on a number of whiteboards, but I think in any product team or on any project, you're going to have these business, this business kind of sphere of people who are really kind of focused on what's the viability of the product. In some cases, that might mean, is it going to make money? In other cases, they might have different business objectives that are not financially incentivized. And then you have the engineering side, which is all about building it. Is it possible to build? How long is it going to take to build? Is it practical to build? And then in the UX part, it's all about understanding the desirability of the thing you're making. So make sure that you're making a thing that not only is going to make money or achieve the business goal, and is possible to build, but also like a thing that is solving a problem that humans have and is really kind of filling a void in the world and doing it in a way that is delightful for people. So the actual people and roles, I know I just slammed titles and went on a whole soapbox about that, but here are some of the titles that might work in each of these kind of different groups. In viability, you might have somebody called product owner, a business analyst, marketing, data analysts, even legal. And then up in the engineering side of things, on physical products, you might have mechanical engineers, electrical engineers, manufacturing. In digital products, they might be called software engineers, front-end developers, back-end developers. Regardless, their job is to build the thing and build it in a good way, an accessible way. And then finally, in the UX circle, I'm a firm believer that if it's a blended product, a digital product, or a physical product, it should have some kind of person who is doing the strategy, the research, and also somebody focused on kind of writing the words and making sure that the content is good. And then in physical products, you would have kind of an industrial designer, and in digital products, you would have a UI designer. So I hope that clarifies things, but now I'm going to pull out all the asterisks because of my soapbox on titles and say that every team and every company is different. So I might be calling them a certain thing here, but they might not actually go by that in the real world. So in summary, I've talked a lot about a lot of different questions related to UX, and I've done my best to answer them, but the truth of the matter is that there's a lot of ambiguity out there, and my advice to all of you is to embrace that and always be learning and just continually be curious and know that like at the core of it, it's really all about understanding who your user is and advocating for them. Whether you're called an industrial designer, product designer, a UI designer, a UX designer, doesn't matter. I think it's all of our jobs to really do that and advocate for that. So that's all. Thank you for listening. I hope this clears things up for you, or maybe it doesn't. It might have inspired more questions in you, but there's a Q&A at the end, so we can hopefully talk about that some more. Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Jen. That was fantastic. And I think we hear so many things echoed from what Jen has said that we see every day in our careers as designers. And some of us are further on the industrial side and some of us are further on the UX side. And then there's this blurry space in the middle. So I love getting Jen's perspective, which is a little bit further on that UX side. Because what's fantastic is our next speaker, Nick, is somebody who falls perfectly in the middle. He is the mix of that ID know-how along with the digital, making sure to balance those interactions with the actual, the physical design. Because of course, to designers, whether your product is digital or physical, I think a lot of us those of us who are industrial designers go into it partly with an appreciation of objects and forms and aesthetics. And it's wonderful to get the chance to balance those physical elements with the digital elements. So I'll go ahead and turn it over to Nick, and he's going to talk us through some of his work at Teague. So Nick, feel free to take it away.
Excellent. Thank you so much for the intro. And Jen, I loved the presentation. The Venn diagram is actually a lot of what I'll be talking about, the intersections and that blurry lines in between. But first, I'd like to thank IDSA Ohio for the invitation. It's an absolute pleasure to be here to to say a thing or two. My screen should be sharing. If I could get a thumb, yep, perfect, good as gold. So with that, I'd love to start off with one of the most humbling experiences that I'm sure many of you can relate to. And that's when you try and explain to your family or your friends what it is that you do. And this is very attuned to what Jen was just talking about. So start off with, well, you know, I'm an industrial designer. And you can see that disconnect in their eyes. And you just sort of wait for that follow-up question, you know. It's like, so, you know, do you design buildings? Are you an artist? You know, something like that. And I can imagine this being true with almost every other design title out there as well. So what you do, you sort of just follow with the punches, and you're like, well, you try and explain a couple of things you're working on. It's like, well, I'm doing this small electronic consumer device. We just made this prototype. And then we, you know, made this animation. And actually, we went through and started to make a click-through prototype as well. Now, bear in mind, my family live in New Zealand, and here's the proof. No shoes. So the last time I went and did this, and I tried to explain what I was working on, I was actually working on a screen-based interface. And they're like, you know, wait, what? I mean, you can even see it in my stepfather's face right there. It's like, I thought you make real things. And it's like, well, you know, I do make real things. But these days, it's impossible to design the tangible without deeply understanding the intangible. So with that, my name's Nick Ross, Creative Director at Teague, and I'd like to shed some light on 3 designer-specific myths that I'd challenge based on the way that we work. And I want to start here. Myth number 1. So because of our design education, and you know, we're told and we learn about all of the design greats and the incredible impact that they've had, and for most of us, it formulates an aspiration, that aspiration to stand among them and become a genius designer. One that is a household name and completely capable of transforming a Fortune 100 company around. But what I want to do today is debunk that, because design is not about the individual, but it's about a team. And I'll go as far to say as, if you're not a contributor, if you're not a collaborator, then you can't be a designer. Even the greats didn't go at it alone. It's arguable that their genius was actually in the team they surrounded themselves with. And this is super important because we need that friction to rub up against. You know, we need those disagreeing perspectives or those stories or personal experiences that differ greatly from our own experiences. And, you know, we need to be able to empathize and shift our own perspectives so that we can truly understand the importance of a solution and for the people that we're designing for as well. So, I mean, with that, more often than not, you know, the physical team at Teague, you know, will set out to design a product, and then we'll sort of step back and be like, hold up, you know, the best path forward is to actually design an app. Or the contrary, where, you know, we set out to design a digital experience and really start to uncover what that really means and realize, well, we can't achieve that without accompanying it with hardware. So I want to share an example. And we were designing a gesture input device for children to really capture their imagination through audio and play, and no screen, like no screen. So apologize for the sound behind me. I imagine it's probably going through, so I'll try and speak louder while it goes past. But we actually had 2 designers on the task, one with a digital background and the other physical. Now, they both divided and conquered the challenge. Digital designer focused on the information architecture, modes of interactivity, you know, really trying to uncover, you know, or figure out how this works, while the physical designer on the other side really leaned into the tangible asset, focused on the human factors, ergonomics, like where's the arm go? Like, how's the arm going to interact with the buttons? What do they feel like? But now, and this is just to paint a little bit more perspective, but something we're constantly up against as professionals is how do we communicate this? How is this design communicated? No matter how amazing the idea is, if it can't be communicated, it won't succeed. And the way this project was documented was actually only made possible because of that friction, because of that tension between, and ultimately that collaboration between the physical and the digital. So without both sides of the story, it was impossible to explain what that full user experience was. So this is what made this such a unique challenge as well, trying to document how a digital cloud service or system would respond to real world inputs like gesture and voice. So what we actually ended up having to do on the fly is invent a whole new type of documentation for this one. So it was very clear that you could follow the journey. Now, with that, I mean, it's really been my experience that the most innovative work happens when we collaborate. And I'd go as far to say that I'll put a stake in the ground and say, it's actually not about the individual, but it's about the team. Let's look at number 2. So, the drill. You grab an interaction designer, an industrial designer, an engineer, sprinkle in some UX, and you've got the dream team. Well, the issue there I have is the expectation on the discipline. The implied stay in your swim lane. Your responsibility is this. And when it's put into practice, what I've seen is designers run all the way up to the very edge, which is essentially the cliff of their discipline. And then, they're sort of standing there, looking across this gaping void, unsure about how to make the leap, unsure about where their jurisdiction is. So that's where I would argue that multidisciplinary teams is not going far enough. What we really need is interdisciplinary teams, the ones that learn off one of another. And at Teague, we're really big at crossing disciplines. In fact, just to call it out, half of our digital team actually have a background in physical. So either started there or have been building their own products or do it on the side for fun. So, bridging that gap leads to a super rich exchange of tools, processes, and methodologies. And also another thing we believe is we don't have babies to protect. Very quick to share. So share early, share often, remove the project walls wherever we can. And we also like to practice something that we call the swarm, which is about inviting people in, engaging them in areas of the process, not just in brainstorms, but throughout the full duration. So, even me, if I stumble across something, I'm walking down the street and I'm like, this would be awesome for that team over there. I can just quickly fire it over, give them my 2 cents, and really we all start to welcome this way of working. So it's actually been that way of working that has really led us to pioneer our own processes. And I'm going to move on to one of my favorite examples, which was a recent project with Segway. Now, the ask was simple: design 3 electric off-road vehicles. No one's done it. You'll be the first. They'll be the first. And actually, this project was such a sprint, full of complexities. You can imagine, you just look at one of these things and you're like, yeah, that's complicated. But it required us to be hyper efficient, cover a ton of ground, and all of this in a very short window of time. So when we started with a mostly physical team, complemented with a ton of human factors, ergonomics, expertise, engineering. But what we quickly discovered was we're running out of time using traditional methods. So, and we're also too disconnected from what we're actually designing. These things are large, they're big things. So we set out to solve the problem better. We set out to find a better way. And actually through this project, even though the project was already underway. So simultaneously, the team of designers worked with our internal digital experts, and actually, believe it or not, some of them even took it upon themselves to bootstrap in Unity, like basic code and just pulling things off the internet and just try it out, make it work. And then what they developed was essentially a digital tool. You know, it's a virtual reality platform specific for industrial designers, but designed by industrial designers. You know, it's this strange sort of middle tension in the middle. And what this did is not only increase the design efficiency of designing for these large scale objects, but it actually bridged the ocean in real time between our studio, which is based in Seattle, with Segway's production team in China. So more importantly, this tool actually gave us the confidence and the assurance that what we were designing was realizable, and also achieved our design intent. You know, instead of doing the infinite zoom in CAD and trying to nut out this strange little surface that in reality, you know, it's not even going to get made. So we actually ended up taking that a step further, you know, really blurring the lines, blurring the intersection between physical and digital, where we actually used a mixture of, well, mixed reality to further our spatial understanding, but really prove out the human factors. You know, for us, the most important thing was design for real people, and the different sizes, the different shapes and body sizes of people as well. So this actually allowed us a greater understanding of what the design would be like, as well as engineering implications, almost in real time as well. So the engineers would fire over, we've just revised this CAD, put it in, and we're like, oh, hold up, that's going to affect our bumper, you know, whatever it is. But it became instrumental in determining also the legibility of our digital content. So, you know, you've got a certain arm length as well, and it's all well and good putting it in CAD, but having that in reality mixed with the VR brought that whole thing to life as well. We called it the garage. Well, for us, it's kind of a digital version of a garage. And this was another great example of us mixing disciplines that led to great value. And for us, it seemed almost unfair to keep this just to ourselves. So we've actually offered it up to the community for free. Feel free to go and check it out. Enough of my shameless plug. I wanted to use another really good example, which is co-disciplines. And I'm going to use a recent medical example for that, which was accompanied by an app. Now, the designer that was developing the app interface, I actually saw his name on there, so he knows who I'm talking about, was thinking through how to navigate the information and landed on these 3 distinct states, you know, as one does. But with that same mental model, he went as far as to visualize what that would look like in a physical form. So here you could look at the device and intuitively understand what it does, because it's the same rationale, the same thinking, the same logic that went into the digital side. You can't really tell it in this mysterious detail shot that I've put up there, but the thinking was absolutely superb. So what that actually did is it really deepened that relationship between the physical and the digital, not just for the product or the solution, but also within the team. And this only happened by cliff jumping between those 2 disciplines, being at the edge of those cliffs and jumping. So for me, it goes without saying that I truly believe the best new ideas live in these intersections. It's really not about disciplines, but it's how they come together and how they blend. Now, myth number 3, naturally I save the best for last. It wasn't all that long ago, if you asked a fellow designer, hey, you know, what's your aspirations as a designer? You know, and that response I'd get back was often to the tune of, well, you know, I'd love to improve the life of others. Or, you know, I'd love to address this product's cradle to grave. Or, well, you know, I've been studying up on biomimicry and I'd love to integrate that. There's so many amazing things happening with nature. So, you know, always something to a tune of something really deeply empathetic. Not saying there was a right answer or a wrong answer to this, just making conversation. But when you pose this question today, especially to a recent grad, you know, it often resembles something like, well, you know, I want to walk into a store, point to all the products I've made, and, you know, pump products like a real designer. Well, you know, fair enough. I think we've all had that thought. I think we've all been there. And in fact, you know, what's on screen at the moment is an example of that, where we actually designed everything for this store, for this company, from the counter itself to the products, even a game. But more importantly, we designed the experience. And this is the invisible part, is when you walk into this coffee shop, every part of that user journey has been designed, you know, from your first impressions, all the way through to your payment, all the way to sitting down or on the go with your coffee, and even the way that you socialize as well. So what I wanted to highlight there is that never before has design had a seat at the table of the C-suite as well. Design is so entrenched in companies nowadays, where design in a company is as much of a conversation as their business objectives or financial strategies. You know, we could go as far to say as like, you know, we made it, fam. Now design's finally taken serious. But what I want to point out is, you know, we too need to take design serious. Because, I mean, I guess you could say this folk didn't successfully blur the lines. But actually, you know, there's so much more to design. It's not just about shipping. The responsibility of design is that we can change the world. Currently, there is so much focus placed on pumping out money-making products that we've stopped asking the questions that expose what design should be doing and addressing the problems that live between the disciplines, you know, those orphan products that no one's claimed. And it's the designer's responsibility to improve the world through design. And in essence, that's our job, to push the positives that design can have on the world, and to be the voice in the room that says, well, should we do that? Well, you know, have we made sure we've addressed this population? As opposed to just being like, oh yeah, we can do that. So, you know, deadlines and budgets will always be there, but we should always go outside our boundaries to improve the world through our work, to ensure we hear the needs, the desires of our target audience, to approach our work from a perspective of equality and inclusion, and to really champion these voices through design. It's not the responsibility of a single discipline, but it's a responsibility of us as a collective. I mean, look at 2020. If ever there was a time, and you know, this is not just specific to physical design as well. That same rigor and attention needs to be applied to digital. Here too, problems can be exacerbated and amplified. Take, for example, some of the recent challenges in tech with racial biases and social media targeting. Making a product is not going to make someone less racist. But raising questions early in the design process and changing a bias in an algorithm potentially can. Even though this may never be seen, you can't put your stamp on it. You can't say, I did that. But the waterfall effect of this far outweighs something that is tangible, or something that's sitting on a shelf. You know, just being that far upstream and entrenched in those conversations. So regardless of the myths that exist today around what we do as designers and, you know, what the disciplines are, there are two very strong voices out there screaming louder than ever, and we really should be listening. One is the general public screaming out for social justice and equality. The other is the environment screaming out for change and how we've been treating it. And sadly, those two voices are the voices of the unclaimed orphans, the ones who are sitting in the intersections. So designing for change won't be possible unless we all stand at the cliffs of our discipline, take the leap, and truly blur the lines. Design shouldn't be about shipping, but rather improving the lives. And that's our role. So with this, I'm going to leave you with something we strongly believe at Teague, where, you know, we know not every project can change the world, but we approach everyone although it can. With that, thank you.
My gosh, thank you so much, Nick. And I don't know about all of the other attendees, but I think I was just reminded a little bit why I do design and why I love what I do. I think the impact is so clear in how our work impacts the people that it affects, but also the people, you know, as we're filtering our creative output, I think it impacts us as well as designers. And so putting out good work, you know, it's a positive cycle. But yeah, so I think Nick has just been such a fantastic example of what that space, that liminal space right in the middle looks like, and what, you know, combining some of those physical and digital tools. You know, I know at Kaleidoscope, which is where I work, that's something that we've been adopting as well. And you can really see how VR is such a powerful tool to kind of blend together those spaces and get into that sort of like funky AR. You know, all of that is so interesting. With the collaboration and the team element in mind, I think this is a great transition to introduce Jon. So our original speaker, Nicole, as I said, couldn't join us this evening, but Jon is the lead industrial designer at Level, and he's taking over for Nicole this evening. But I think it just goes to show, you know, what kind of teamwork and collaboration, you know, day of an event, she was able to say, oh my gosh, you know, I can't make it. Here's a team member who's able to speak to the project, because nobody is spearheading things by themselves. It's all such a big collaboration. So Jon is going to give us a little bit of a peek into the physical side of things. So we've seen the UX side, we've seen a blend, and now we're going to walk it a little bit more towards physical industrial design. So Jon, feel free to take it away and share a little bit about your work.
Thank you. Oh. Let me just share my screen here. All right, we should be all good now. And yeah, like thanks for the introduction, and the last two presentations were really great. And unfortunately, Nicole kind of had something pop up last minute and can't make it. So I'll try my best to be representing of Level and the good presentations of Nicole. I'm not quite her level quite yet, but I'll try my best, and thanks for having me. But Nicole is the co-founder of Level and the chair of Women in Design. And if there was any questions that you guys had, just like focused at her going into this, because I know she had been kind of in the Instagram posts and on LinkedIn and stuff like that, just shoot her an email at nicole@leveldesignsf.com. But yeah, I'm Jon, the first employee of Level, probably around 3.5 years ago. And I'm super happy to be part of like a small and growing team where we get to have like a really big say in helping shape the company culture and like the physical products and building a really awesome portfolio. But us at Level Design, we definitely lean a little bit more towards the physical product of everything. Not to say that things don't get blurry like this talk is about, but we definitely focus on hardware and physical design, and like a lot of our mock-ups are still in paper and kind of 3D prints and cardboard. The studio right now, we have one person going in at a time. They're building giant like furniture-sized cardboard where we're just kind of using all the Amazon boxes that we're all getting to make a really amazing product, hopefully in the future. But yeah, we're an industrial design studio based in San Francisco. And I think we do think about UX design in products as well as physical design, but the kind of blurry lines in hardware are like how big does the battery get and how big does the screen get, and what's the resolution of the screen when we're working with like UX designers and collaborative teams where we're just the industrial design experts and we're kind of working with other experts. But there's a lot of thinking going on and a lot of depth that happens in products beyond just the physical side and beyond just the digital side. Everybody needs a full understanding of what makes a really good product, and is it safe to use, and can it help make the world a better place, like you were just saying, Nick. And luckily, over the last few years, 4 years, we've had some really awesome clients. It's just kind of a shameless Level plug over here, but it's been an awesome journey, and I'm glad that we could have a chance to talk to you guys and share a little bit about us. And here's a list of success stories kind of just within the startup realm, where we do have a little bit more blurriness between like UX design and UI design and branding, and pairing that with like the industrial design that we do. But these are startups that we work with that had really amazing stories the last couple of years. And today we're going to be focusing mostly on Tempo, which is a home gym product that launched earlier this year and has been doing really well. But here's an approach that Level takes to design. And our first goal is to create new archetypes and really simple designs that stand the test of time. As you see here, this was a product for a company called North that got acquired by Google, I think, earlier this year. But we're definitely kind of checking into the new space of hardware and UX and putting a screen pretty much just right in your eyeball, and like, how does that experience work, and how hot does the little projector get next to your head, and is it a good experience, and will become a viable product for the price that they want. And there's a lot of things to think about, so we're excited to share that. And as a company, we focus on creating a balance between design and manufacturing, as well as creating a balance within the team. And as we've been growing our team the last couple of years, I think thinking about having a really diverse and loving and careful team has been top of mind for us in 2020. We work with clients to bring amazing and innovative technologies to life with simple and easy to use products. This was a heart rate monitor, or a EKG actually, that was launched last year. So bringing like artificial intelligence and machine learning to just this little 30 by 90 millimeter kind of pocketable square that can kind of replace the visit to a hospital and tell your doctor if you're in danger or not. And then being more physical hardware focused, we have a strong connection to materials and manufacturing processes, which we believe lead to really great physical products that we could show. And we want to fully understand all parts of the product to help navigate complexities in engineering and UX to ensure the core vision comes to life. So just making sure this product can be real. And then finally, we believe in an open and honest collaboration between all parties involved in the development. We're experts in designing hardware, but love to work closely with experts in UX and UI design, engineering, marketing, founders of companies to create the best product possible. Like, we're a really, really small team, and we work really well with other small and big teams where we could have a really great communication and process. We've been asked to show a little bit of the behind the scenes of what it's like to work at a small studio during COVID. We all sit around at the same table. As of last year, we all sat around the same table, and we were a team of maybe 6. But as things kind of changed this year, we've had to adapt on how we work and how do we do presentations in person in the past, and how do we bring that experience online, and how do we share things together and stay inspired. And the next couple slides are a snapshot into how we found a good balance within the studio. But yeah, like I said, I think at the beginning of 2020, we had 6 people, but now we're at closer to 10. So we've grown and added 3 people on this year, and growing remotely has shown some great insights on how we want to be as a team and where we want to become. And I think we want to stay really small, just to have the close-knit culture and kind of like caring culture that we have currently. And as to working collaboratively online, we've been using a lot of online tools and coffees in the morning, coffees in the afternoon, where we're all on video calls and sharing, like making sure our videos are on as much as we can, even though there's like babies and dogs and cats all in the backgrounds. But it's part of the culture that we've helped create at Level, where people all care about each other and like seeing the little 6-year-olds and 1-year-olds, as well as having happy hours every day where we can kind of talk about just our weekends and our plans and our life goals. And then this is actually a screenshot of some online tools that we've been using, which is just essentially a digital pinup board. I think it's called Millinote. It's super, super cheap, but it's to replicate the giant like pinup board studio space that we have, where we'll normally have hundreds of pictures and sketches up on the wall. And we've been able to share this with our clients and ourselves just to stay inspired and stay on the same page. When there's so many moving pieces and 8 designers working remotely, like how do we share our sketches and kind of sticky note the best ones? So that's the tool we've been using mostly, as well as just lots of calls with each other. We talk on the phone all the time. So like I said, some of our recent launches this year have been relevant in times of pandemic, where there's the health sector on the left side, that's AliveCore, the EKG device. And on the right side, it's Tempo, where there's more of like a wellness and physical aspect to this. But it's been more relevant than ever. And I'm excited to share that with you now. So Tempo is a home fitness studio with online classes and a community that's led to lots of success in the last couple of months. And it uses 3D sensors for like live or pre-recorded classes to, I don't know, just stay fit in the home. And I have a video here. Hopefully the audio comes in okay.
Put the distractions behind you and make the goal a reality. Forget the crowded gym. Scrap the rusty weight set. Because it's time for live classes with the world's best trainers.
Hey guys, it's your coach Melissa here, and I will be taking you through a full body workout.
What's up everybody? My name's Cole. I'm psyched to be here with you. Let's keep our core tight. Let's get those knees up.
Trainers that will teach you.
Drive straight up, making sure to keep the shoulders passed back and down.
Push you and take you to the next level.
Think about finding a nice, steady tempo. All we're focusing on here, getting that heart rate up, starting to move that body.
It's time for a smarter home gym with 3D sensors that count every rep. Your form, tracked and analyzed.
I'm noticing that some of you guys are letting those elbows go all over the place. Lock those elbows in.
By trainers that can see when you make a mistake and help you fix it live.
Great correction, guys. Let's get 3 more. Don't let those heels come up. Pull those hips back.
So stop wondering if you're on the right track.
Looking so much better. I love it.
And know you are.
I'm right there with you. This is not where you quit.
Introducing Tempo.
So that was definitely a flashy video, but it kind of shows what the product does in a brief overview. But the exciting part that I get to share with you today is a little bit more of a deep dive into the collaboration between us and Tempo and the hardware design. So we started working with Tempo when it was just the 2 founders coming from New York to California, and this is a picture of the prototype they used to use in the gyms, and it's kind of how they got some of their initial funding. But we love showing the before and after picture, just so everybody knows the value that we brought to them as designers, and they definitely appreciated it, and it's been an awesome relationship to have. So they've grown from the 2 members to currently 60, and I think they're shooting for around 100 employees by the end of the year. So this year has been awesome for them, and it's good to see. Good to get text messages from them, like when things go well or when we're in articles or something like that together. So it's really inspiring, and they definitely keep us, I don't know, happy. But yeah, working with Tempo has been a dream project, and we opened up our doors to them and taught them about the design process of physical hardware, where they'd never done physical product really before. They definitely come from more of a background of software, where we'll do updates with them over time. I think we're still updating this product. As you can see, there's some discrepancies between what's in the picture and what you could buy today. So there was a picture before of like the physical product where it's a little bit more linear and they don't overlap, but I think this startup has been particularly cool because we are kind of like staggering some of these launches and like updates over time. A little bit more similarly to how software would work. But we've got their trust, and it led to like great collaboration between our teams. And then getting into the design of Tempo. So Tempo is definitely designed for the home. It hides away probably a dozen accessories and different parts into a neat little package that I think it's like 1.5 feet by 2 feet by around 6 feet tall. That you could definitely have in your living room or your garage. And we're, like I think Nick said in his last presentation, we're definitely designing a product for actual people in the real world. So we want to make sure it's a pleasure to use, and we thought through as much as we could to make a great product that stands in the home. And design language wise, we chose to follow a more furniture aesthetic, and we used bent sheet metal, kind of reminiscent to what you might have in the home or kitchen or something like that. And also it's familiar to the gym space. Some of the inspiration kind of reminded us of lockers, but it's also something that could be in your living room. And the really cool part about using bent sheet metal was that it worked really well with Tempo's vendors and their resources to create pretty rapid and cheap prototypes, as well as like a really great final product that can hold hundreds of pounds and be really strong. So yeah, I think Tempo, there's a couple other products in the market, and Tempo, we hope, has a more humanistic approach where it is a product for real people like Nick was saying. So that was our goal in this product. And the devil's in the details. This is a product that launched, and we got to spend a lot of time kind of fine-tuning everything with them. It's been a 2-year process or more. So it's been great. And then one of the really exciting things we got to do as designers on this product is influence kind of the company through and through. When it was just the two of them, we had a lot of say in like how the branding was looking, but also we had an amazing time creating a really like fresh color palette that was inspired by home gyms and like fashion and other home goods, where it actually inspired their branding and their website. Like if you go on their website, there's just giant splashes of colors, and their product photography is really gorgeous. And I think we had a big say in that, as well as the unknown fact is that these colors on the weights actually help the computer vision recognize what weight plates you have on. So the 10-pound weight is one color, and then the computer can sense that blue's on there, you're lifting 20 pounds. So there is a lot of like thought going into the hardware and software and how they come together to make a good product that there's all these things that it does and you don't even know that it does it. And then, like I said before, we wanted to design Tempo in a way that stands out. And we were working on this product before some of the competitors came out. But we think that human design approach and like design first approach definitely led to a really great product that kind of stands out from the current marketplace. It's a freestanding device that's not mounted to the wall. It actually sits out a couple inches from the wall, so you could reach behind it and get the weights and the barbells and the dumbbells that are back there, as well as having storage inside of the little cabinets. And there's a little tray on the bottom, and then there's an empty void in the center behind the display where you could put your yoga mat and foam roller. And it definitely just makes this whole experience of a whole gym as small and compact as possible. But by putting it away from the wall, like all we did was just move it away from the wall, and it added all these things. Here's a view into the thoughtful storage that I was just talking about, as well as all the colored weight plates that we were tasked to make. But yeah, this is just actually a glimpse of some of the accessories that come with it, and there's definitely a little bit more that's behind there because there's a lot of duplicates. But how do you make all these things fit well in your home? At least my home, I don't know if this would, normal gym equipment would look really great. So we wanted to help curate all the products. So we got to spec the colors of the finishes of everything and how big the logo is on the weight plates. And like we actually even played with coating the barbells and the dumbbells in like a really cool matte ceramic finish, essentially. I think some of this stuff gets lost in production, but it was really cool to kind of control the whole hardware of this product. And one of the biggest things that we had done from the experience standpoint, and it's something that we were able to revise. The first units had bent hooks when they were coming overseas and shipping from being bumped around in the trucks. The bent metal hooks in the back were getting kind of destroyed, and we got to revise as things were going on to create a better experience. And we adjusted like really, really quickly to create more robust hooks. So these are cast aluminum hooks with rubber overmolded parts to hold the 35-pound barbell on the back. And then just standing it off from the product a little bit allows you to reach through without really looking and put the objects on the back of this. And humanizing tech, and what does it really mean? For a product this big, it's 6 feet tall, like I said, it's pretty essential that we wanted to make it pretty approachable. And it does have a lot of kind of like scary technology in it. So it has 3D cameras and artificial intelligence and all these things in there that you wouldn't necessarily want to put in your living room facing your couch or something like that. But we thought about the form of this product with like really soft radii and making sure that it looks like a piece of furniture, and made sure that it didn't fall over if you have little kids and there's 100 pounds in there, right? You wanted to make sure that it was really, really safe and blended well in the home. I think I might be running out of time. I'll kind of go a little bit quicker, but yeah, it uses 3D cameras to kind of map your body in a unobtrusive way, and it actually doesn't show this. It's a point cloud system where there's no data or information about you besides just like where your elbows are and where your wrists are and where your knees are. So it's a pretty anonymous and kind of like comfortable thing to have in your home, which is totally important these days, I think. Yeah, privacy is paramount. And it was something that the company wanted from the very beginning. We could map the colors onto everything and show people's faces to everybody else and to the trainers, but we decided to just use a regular kind of abstracted human body point cloud. And for the hardware product, design through manufacturing, it's the less glamorous part, but it's really essential to our work as hardware designers. I could just kind of skim through some of these, but we were able to revise and collaborate with the vendors and the client to make a really awesome product. These are just some of the snapshots and notes that we have digitally. We'll share with the vendors in China as well as the clients just right down the road from us on how we want things to be aligned and resolved, and make sure that the product is super refined and as detail oriented as we are. But yeah, the 2-year journey has finally seen some success. Tempo sales have jumped up 500%. They're growing like crazy, and they've sold a bunch of these objects. And here's some of the press that we've gotten recently for it. It's it was in the Rolling Stones the other day, and Fast Company and Arc Digest. And we've seen a lot of YouTube videos. I've never seen a YouTube review of my product before, but it was really awesome to see this thing come to life and everybody be a little happy about it. And then I think at the beginning we had touched on the IDA awards, and we just won 2 silver awards for Tempo and AliveCore just the other day. So thank you.
Fantastic. Thank you so much for sharing, Jon, and thank you for stepping in like last minute and speaking to your work. I mean, I think it's just wonderful to get to see that there are no compromises. We are creating products, that are just as thoughtful at the digital side as they are on the physical side, and I think that your work with Tempo really embodies that. You can see that, there are no gaps. It's a really holistic journey throughout, and I think we can see that with some of the work that we've seen from Jen and Nick as well, that it doesn't matter if your product is physical or digital, the whole process, the entire experience from start to finish has been thought through. And so it's really great to see as technology evolves and as human beings start interacting with different technologies in different ways, that just becomes integrated into the way that we think about how people experience things and the way we design for that. So wow, I mean, I know I have so much to think about going forward. So first of all, thank you all for sharing with us this evening. I want to take a moment as well to let everybody know that we're going to go ahead and move into the Q&A session, and we've got a couple of like preloaded questions. If you remember when you signed up for the event, we asked you to ask a couple questions of our speakers. So I believe Scott and Kristen are going to start kind of collecting the Q&A, and we'll start with some of the the preloaded questions that we got from our attendees earlier. But if you'll see at the bottom of your screen, everyone should have a little bar that says Q&A. And you feel free to start filling in questions in there and asking questions of specific speakers, or if you have more general ones. And we'll do kind of a formal Q&A for a bit, but after a little while, I'm actually going to open it up so that any of our attendees can answer any of the questions, because I think everybody's an expert in a little bit in whatever they do, and it would be awesome to get to hear from our attendees as well. So Scott, I'll turn it over to you, and feel free to get us kicked off on the Q&A. And folks, if you have any questions for our speakers, please feel free to drop those in the Q&A. And we'll go ahead and get started.
Yeah, thank you, Kat. And one other thing, as we go along, since hopefully some of you can also speak to some of these topics, there should be somewhere a hand raising thing. So I'll try to call on some people, and I'm actually, or I don't know, maybe Kat, you have control over that too, or whoever the host is right now has control over that, to let some people speak. So I'll try to let some people speak if you want to raise your hand if you think you can contribute to something or have a follow-up question. But yeah, so put any questions in the Q&A, but I'll start with some of the questions that we got from everybody. Yeah, so one of the, there's a few main topics that people were talking about. And so to go back to Jen's presentation about the various roles, Jen, so it seems like everybody is becoming more collaborative and all these disciplines are integrating. So do you have any thoughts on why it seems like at that same time we're seeing the role titles multiplying, which it seems like it's, when you're looking for a job or looking for titles, it seems like it's going the exact opposite direction than what you were speaking to about increasingly things becoming collaborative and blurry.
Sorry, so is the question, why are there more titles now than there were before?
Yeah, so I kind of just talked about the kind of things going in opposite directions of people becoming more collaborative, but also titles multiplying.
Yeah, it probably has a lot to do with the fact that there are blurred lines. So it's really hard to kind of call a thing when there's so many different flavors of it. I mean, you walk into Ben and Jerry's, or, well, I guess we used to be able to walk into a Ben and Jerry's or whatever ice cream shop, and there are so many different flavors of ice cream there. They're all ice cream, but they all taste great. They're all different versions of kind of strawberry and vanilla and all these different flavors. But if it was just ice cream, that would be simple and great for everyone. But I think the diversity and the different types of roles that exist out there is pretty great to explore as well. And I think it's a really great opportunity for all of us if you're not particularly interested in going into a very specific lane of UI design, for example, or industrial design, for example, soft goods design, for example, something very narrow. You can kind of craft and shape your own career trajectory and give yourself the title that you feel like best encompasses that.
Okay.
So it is confusing when you're like searching for a job and you're like, what does this mean? But like, I think it's perfectly okay, and I encourage everyone to ask what they mean by that. Read the job description, read the activities that are asked of you, and meet the people and see if it's a good fit for you and what you want to do with your career.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Are there any particular titles that somebody might look for if they're looking for something that was really at the intersection of ID and UX? And I don't know if Nick, you can speak to this as well, because it seems like that's your title. So if somebody was looking to get into that, how, where might they find that job and what might it be called?
I'm more than happy to try and take a stab at it. I really enjoyed the way Jen addressed some of those titles and names. Specific to product design, I grew up as referring to myself as a product design. And I think that's become one that has become incredibly blurred in terms of what it means and how it's been received. And if anything, I think it kind of comes down to trying to understand the type or your audience more so. So if you're speaking specifically to a firm and you know they're entrenched in this kind of work, the title may mean one thing or another, but actually I'd really like to echo Jen's advice, which is to have that conversation, to bring up what your interests are, what your focus is, how you want to grow, which I think is something that is hyper important to bring to an interview or bring to those initial conversations, is to talk about your evolutionary steps as a designer, talk about your ambitions, talk about where you want to be and how this role could potentially get you there. And that basically putting all your cards on the table is one way that you're not going to walk in disappointed. And versus taking a role, taking a job, and then learning 6 months down the track, well, actually, that's not what I want to do. It's better to have that full transparency, put your cards on the table, and same's true with title.
Okay. And one thing a lot of people were asking is for industrial designers who are looking to get into UX and make that more of their practice, do you have any advice on how to move that direction? And we have some people who are looking from that from a senior designer level, and then down to students who have yet to graduate and get into the field. But yeah, it seems like there have been a lot of people who have moved from idea to UX, and I guess do you have any tips for how to make that transition?
My favorite thing to suggest is to participate in research in some kind of way. And I don't mean that by volunteering to be, on the participant who's being interviewed, but I mean, be a note taker. Even if you're a senior designer, volunteer to sit in the back room and be the note taker for the moderator. Because I don't have any formal training in UX research, and I do that on my current project. That's my main role. And I learned UX research by watching people who are awesome at it and learning from them and observing them, taking notes for them, being the one who's documenting all the Post-its in the back room. Just observe, put yourself adjacent to the people that you want to learn from. And even if you're at a place where you're not, specifically around those roles, you can still find ways to, attend events where it's, there's IXDA as well, which is all about UX design. You can sort of juxtapose yourself and put yourself in situations where you can learn from those people, even if you're not working directly with them. But my advice would be to, if you're an industrial designer who's looking to bridge the gap and do a little bit more UX design, I would say that a great first place to start is research, because a lot of industrial design firms do a ton of research already. So it's right there. Just volunteer and raise your hand and, say you're interested. And then when the day comes when you're the one who's going to do the interview, or just be courageous about it. And everyone has their first time moderating, and sometimes it doesn't go great, and but you learn from it. You can learn something from every experience, and maybe you'll learn that it's not for you, but that's okay too, and you can try the next thing.
Thanks. And John, so you're more of a traditional industrial designer, and your firm seems like it's more traditionally industrial design, but do you look for designers to have UX, UI, on their resume to some degree? I guess, and do you see that as becoming necessary, to work in a, I guess maybe more high-tech ID field? I mean, I assume it's not necessary for furniture designers, but at a firm like yours, is it more necessary or not really coming in?
I'll speak to our super small kind of hyper focused team. We don't care too much about the background. We definitely look for a culture fit more than anything else. We had an intern just over the summer who came from finance. but it was her first design internship, and this is like a totally new experience to her, and she was doing everything for the first time. And we've had some like really young kids just coming from just any field ever. But I think what we look for most is a culture fit and like what they want to learn from us and what they want to learn as designers. But I could speak to some of my friends who are kind of transitioning right now from other forms of design to UI and UX design. My girlfriend just switched from interior design, and now she's a visual designer somewhere else. And my neighbors got acquired by Fjord, and now he's kind of like a experienced designer. So I hear a lot about the transitions, and I think a lot of them do like some of the thinking and experience if you have UI experience somewhere else. But I think for the most part, as long as you're a really like honest person, you could kind of get whatever job you want as long as you fit with the team.
Nice. And do any of you have advice for students who are, I guess, still in school as to what they might focus on, or how to get the most out of, I guess, the unique environment that a school is, where you can take classes in other fields, whereas it's a little tougher once you get out in the industry.
I'm happy to take a stab. I think it's be a sponge. I mean, it's kind of as simple as that. Like, go out there with a super open mind, even just seeing what other people in the opposite side of the campus are doing. And I mean, we all kind of do this anyway, within our friend groups and families and everything, where, that questioning shouldn't have to be like specific to design, but just being curious about everyone else, what they do, and then just sort of trying to see whether there's parity, whether you can relate to it, whether that's something you can incorporate into your day-to-day. And I mean, through that, if I speak a little bit to my personal journey, then, part of my journey of being a sponge was using design to travel. Using design to break the shores of New Zealand and make my way overseas, experience Europe, experience Asia, experience the US. And then by forcing myself into that and being a sponge that whole way through, it sort of opened up a lot of the way I see the audience, the way I see, the people in all these different cultures. And then the combination of all of that sort of starts to formulate who you become and the kind of designer you want to be, but also puts a face to who you want to serve as well.
Yeah. Can I add to that too?
Sure.
My advice for students would be that at least my design program, and I'm sure a lot of them are like, you get out of it what you put into it. Your end game there is really to build like a really, pardon my French, badass portfolio. And there are people in my class who kind of just went through the motions, and they, completed the assignments and on time and all of that. And then there were people who like really went above and beyond and really like, did the extra work, did an extra round of research, did some validative testing, did some kind of extra stuff that really kind of stands out. My program at the time required 0 internships, and I did 5. Because I knew that doing internships was a great way for me to kind of sample out the types of companies that I wanted to work for when I graduated. So I would say both of those things would be my sort of practical advice for students. And it's okay to not know if you want to do UI, UX, ID. I started doing a lot of different things, and then I kind of narrowed my focus, and now it's wide again. Your career is not going to be the thing that you graduate thinking you're doing. It's going to continue to change, and you're going to continue to learn.
Very good. And I see there we've got a couple of questions in the chat about, I think, somebody's portfolio, especially somebody, shifting into UI or UX, should it be like deep dive case studies, finished work, or, and if they only have ID experience, how you present that? I mean, I know, John, you talked about just being open and honest about what you're interested in, but is there a way to kind of communicate that in your portfolio before you get a chance to speak to an employer?
I mean, when I look at candidates, I really like to see more case studies that for me, showcase research specifically, and not that just you did a bunch of research in the beginning, you made a couple personas, but also that you like went back and took something back in front of those users and saw how it performed and then made adjustments. So I'd rather see, you know, 2 really, really strong case study projects with the process, and why, you know, what was the problem, what was the challenge, who is your user, what are their pain points and needs, and then how the final solution address that and solve for it, or maybe in some ways how it didn't, because that kind of shows how you're self-critical and you're continuing to always learn and iterate. So I'd rather see 2 really strong case studies than like 7 beautiful polished final results, because I'm not hiring you to make a final polished result. I'm hiring you for how you think.
That's good to hear. And then I guess, well, I guess one more question. Philip is asking, yeah, so as a T-shaped industrial designer who is enjoying their journey with the blurred lines, how do you effectively market yourself, you know, where the titles are the gatekeepers and the filters? So how do you kind of work through the, you know, those gatekeepers and filters around titles?
I'll step up to the plate. It's a tricky one, super tricky one. Actually, it's kind of funny. I was having the conversation with a colleague about T-shaped designers the other day, and we're kicking it back and forth. Where, in many ways, a lot of the creatives that we're seeing, at least at Teague, are somewhat dripping teas. Where it's not just one, and I don't know what you would call that, what letter that would be, but it's where like it's not just one stem per se, and it's like this fascination in multiple places. So, but how to communicate that or how to find that in a place? Network is always a great place to start. By networking, attending events, meeting people, and sort of trying to understand or digest what this company, the type of workplaces do, and then being very focused, very laser focused on having those conversations and seeing whether the myth remains true within those places as well.
Hard for me to answer that because I'm not a recruiter who's like looking for candidates as the first pass and kind of keying in on things like titles. But I would say it's okay to call yourself a couple different things. I see a lot of people who say like, I do UI, UX designer, with an ID interest. You know, I think it's okay to kind of call that out in LinkedIn and the way that you present yourself. It's okay to call that out in your resume and your portfolio and just kind of be clear about what you feel like your strong suit is, maybe like your verticality as Nick was talking about, but also kind of the other areas you're interested in exploring. And it's okay to put that in your description too. Okay, it doesn't come down to one perfect title.
Makes sense. And Jason, you had something to say on this?
Yeah, sure. So, you know, when it comes to, you know, finding these jobs and trying to get around the filters, everyone's heard the old adage about, you know, it's not what you know, it's who you know. You know, I think Nick, you were starting to hit on it, and that is the idea of really turning your network to work for you, and finding the back door into any particular opportunity that you're interested in. Because really, you don't want to go through the front door in many ways. You want to get around those filters because those filters are designed to reduce all the applicants down to the lowest common denominators, right? The bullet points that are gonna hit the right keywords. You really wanna kind of get around those as much as you can. And by networking into, you know, finding someone you know, making an introduction, have them introduce you to someone else. I can tell you the last 2 or 3 people that I've hired, they had to go through that system, but it's different when you have someone waiting for you on the back end, waiting for that application to go in, rather than trying to feed in all the right answers that are going to make that filter pop. So you really want to try to get in first, you know, to have the best chance of success.
Thanks. Could we get to talk a little bit about collaboration and workflow? Nick, you talked about wanting to get people to step across their discipline boundary. Do you have any tips for how to kind of prod the other people on your team to jump across that chasm?
Yeah, for sure. Another thing another thing that we sort of practice or encourage is it's more orientates around the approach as opposed to the process. And with that approach is also like not seeing a discipline as a defining factor, because and then it's about sort of paving the way for new processes and pushing your processes as well. So taking what you know and then building upon it. So keeping a very open mind, watching how other people or other disciplines are performing, actually keeping your finger on the pulse with what's happening in other industries as well. It's funny, I spent a lot of, even as an industrial designer, like heavily focused on industrial design, I ended up spending a lot of time looking into graphic design and looking into visual design and looking into interaction design, all for new inspiration. I mean, Pinterest, as amazing as it is still all these squandered shapes and like just applied to different things. So by actually pushing beyond what I was used to looking at, which is a lot of really unbelievably beautiful industrial design, and then pushing into other avenues and other disciplines, I started to find a lot of inspiration in that. And then it went further. So it went from something that was purely aesthetic to something that was process driven or methodologies or deeper learnings. And so kind of finding mentors in the different disciplines can also help you get that way, help you get there as well, where you're ready to continue learning. Education should never stop.
Very good. And then I guess keeping with you for a second. Also, when are you going to finish the boat?
Funny story. So for context, I live on a boat, but at the moment I'm building another. I don't know who this anonymous attendee is. Someone trolling me. But I'd actually, to figure out where the joists were, building a top floor, I drilled a series of little holes to try and figure out exactly where the joists were so that I could go through with the lug bolts. What I forgot to do is silicon them back up, and Seattle's just seen a whole lot of rain. So I got home last night and there was a whole lot of water coming all through the ceiling. So I'm probably going to have to try and fast track the boat.
One question I have, so you presented on the VR. So Carrie was asking if you are seeing any opportunities in the VR and AR for UX and UI. I think what he's saying is, I guess you can correct me if I'm wrong, not just using UX and UI as a tool, but having that as the ultimate interface. Is that correct, Carrie? Yeah, so design for VR and AR.
I might actually be able to speak to this a little bit. I know that something like maybe a little similar to what Nick's team does, something that my team does at Kaleidoscope is using VR and AR as, if not always the end product, as a tool that we have added to our toolbox as designers that allows us to explore some of those blurry spaces between the actual physical and the digital. So I know one of the clients that my firm works with, they're trying to evaluate some spaces, some experiences that are hard to build or prototype, especially right now when usability testing can be so difficult to do in the time of COVID. And so something that has become a fantastic tool for us is using virtual reality and augmented reality to actually evaluate some of our work, and to evaluate our work maybe at a distance, doing remote usability testing, or even to kind of get a chance to play around with some of those forms. Obviously, when you start prototyping, especially if what you're working on is big and complex, you know, it can get very complicated very quickly, and your turnaround, you know, for your next iteration might be months and months. But when you start using VR as a tool, or augmented reality to add, you know, a layer to something that you already have a physical component to, it allows you to explore things really quickly, and to stay agile, and to stay nimble, and to kind of shift things up really fast. And I feel like I saw that a lot in the work that like Teague had done for Segway, for example. I thought that seemed like a really great use of the technology, and I know that we're using it similarly too. And if you haven't had a chance, I can't recommend trying it out enough. It's very cool to step into the space and to play around in Gravity Sketch, and to start you know, understanding how you can manipulate in the 3D space, and start drawing in 3D. So it's definitely a pretty cool tool. So maybe I'll let other folks chime in too if they want to share their experiences.
I do have a fun one that was really unexpected. We work at AP Charge, we work a lot with developers, and it's more of the utility field, and it's a little bit different. It's a little bit more virtual. Some of our developers actually looked into 3D visualization to basically analyze relationships and hierarchies in the service. So actually looking at information in 3D, and just like data visualization and graphs, just turn that 3D, and how do you use that to visualize the hierarchy of the structure and the information that we're dealing with. We hadn't thought about it, and someone just brought it up. I thought that was a really cool way of using AR and VR for not necessarily an end product.
Very good.
Can I just say one other quick thing? It's not me. I just dropped it in the chat though. But there's a couple guys that started this in Columbus. They're part of Local Tech Heroes, so they had a passion for wanting to integrate design and UX in a younger field and getting kids involved earlier on. So they actually started to implement and be able to resource and use this technology in younger and younger kids. And I think that's something we're seeing, and as designers we'll continue to see, is people's awareness of these new technologies are going to be more fluent in them, and the understanding is going to grow very, very quickly. So as designers, we have to kind of challenge ourselves to continue to learn and understand, how do we utilize this new technology that's out there? How do we, you know, implement this sooner than later? How do we get, again, to Nick's point, bringing, you know, with the swarm, bringing everybody in, because a lot of times designers, you know, can talk to themselves. And we like to hear each other, and you know, that's a great design, or a nice surface, or did you see the radii on that corner? But we really, you know, oftentimes we also need to take a step out and realize, you know, are people really paying attention to those, or are those the things that we as designers can really truly impact, that makes this really impactful and different and meaningful for the people that we're designing for? So check those guys out. Like I said, you know, if it's not something that exists, bring it into people. I know at our studio too, we've had people that are just interested in AR. We didn't quite have a project for it, but you know, they brought in their whole Xbox system, and you know, we had all these different gaming things. So I think, again, learning at all levels. I think as designers, if we are that sponge, we're able to kind of absorb everything from all these different sides. So, you know, like I said, be open and curious, to Jen's point, you know, about just everything and everyone around you.
Thanks,
I remember
Mom.
that slide I had with all the circles with different titles, and then I kind of like blurred on some new ones that like maybe are fields that haven't emerged fully yet. I think that design for AR and VR is probably one of those for sure. And even within that, there's stuff that just goes beyond any kind of actual like visible interface. I mean, you talk about like gestural design, and like our this for swiping versus this for scrolling and this for opening a menu. Like there's a whole interesting field there that's still kind of emerging, and it's like a really cool opportunity to be on the cutting edge of all of that.
Just to jump in, I think in all honesty, we're just scraping the surface of its capabilities. I also think we're finding ourselves in a really challenging time as well, where a lot of us are working from remotely and missing what it used to be like when you're all in a singular place and you're thriving off one another, and you come together and that creativity just flows, and it just becomes a snowball effect. And because this challenge has only been presented for about 6 months, technology is only just starting to rapidly react to that as well. So I think something that we'll probably see with VR and AR is trying to, borrowing words from the theme, we'll blur lines between that digital and physical and start trying to replace some of the things that some of us are losing at the moment or missing at the moment. But within that, there's so much more potential in other demographics as well. So take, for example, the elderly. The elderly in retirement homes or in some degree of isolation. That's a huge market out there who have not grown up with that technology to feel comfortable with it. So for them, like the leap to jumping into it feels vast, feels greater. So I think that's where I'd be excited to see how we're going to cross some of those thresholds. And I mean, as you brought up earlier, starting with a younger audience will also help carry that message as well. So the younger audience can actually start teaching the older as well.
Thanks. I did want to ask Jon, I know we're coming towards the end of our scheduled time. Danielle was wondering, so first, who designed the digital interface for this? And then I guess, so how was the interface that was being designed, presumably by somebody else, how was that considered when designing a physical product, and how did the two of your teams collaborate?
Yeah. So we were the physical product designers, and then there was another team with kind of like the client in the middle, where we were all communicating with each other over email to try to make sure this kind of giant screen, which essentially could potentially turn into like a giant like tablet or a phone or something like that, but make sure that is not a terrible experience at that scale. I think it's 42 inches or something like that. So, I mean, how close do you want to get and swipe up your whole arm's length to get to the bottom of the scrolling? But I think we did have some influence over like the UI design and the branding as a whole, just because we were doing the physical product first. And we had a lot of great input just because the client trusted us so much about overall design. But someone else designed the digital interface, and we kind of leave it to the experts. Like, we're experts in the physical products, someone else is an expert in something else, but we like to kind of collaborate and give our input. Like, maybe the next generation product, you could do a gesture where you swipe up from 6 feet away to kind of like scroll around or kind of select a class, or maybe it automatically knows because there's 3D sensors that something else is happening, or when you walk away from the screen, something else happens. And these are things that we could bring up to the client and like work a little bit of like UX magic, but we leave it to other people and we just come up with ideas.
Okay.
I've been actually on the other side of that, John, where somebody else had done the hardware and exactly a 42-inch touchscreen.
Yeah.
It's been recent, so it's during COVID. I can't talk about the details of the project, but kind of having to design for the hardware, like the UI for the touchscreen that is that big without actually ever being able to stand in front of it was like a challenge I've never really faced before. I've designed touchscreens for physical products, but I've been able to like hold them and touch them and see how reactive the display is and stand in front of it so I can see the height and where my eyes are sitting in relation to the display. So many interesting factors there to consider, sort of being on the other side of that as well. And we had like a running thread going with the company who made the hardware, so I could ping them with questions at any time, like, well, what happens when the people who are responsible for filling this machine, how do they know that it's empty, and how are they pinged, and what happens if somebody who's, you know, in a wheelchair tries to use it, how are they able to kind of make the screen reach the buttons at the very top of it? It's interesting on both sides of it, so it's kind of, it's fascinating to hear you talk about sort of the industrial design side of it, and working with a UI company.
Is there anything in particular that you guys do to try to streamline the communication? Something that was brought up a lot in the questions was, yeah, getting this done, you know, projects done within a certain time frame. I got the sense that a lot of people saw these, you know, projects kind of drag on as the two teams were trying to work together. So is there anything that helps you move forward efficiently?
I think we're big advocates of like communicating really, really early and pretty often, as much as is kind of conducive to the workflow of working remotely right now. But definitely, like, if we could start talking to the designers before they even start designing, and we tell them like what we're thinking, or what the client is thinking, and we all kind of get aligned as soon as possible, and then just check in every week or have an open email thread or a Slack thread or something like that, and just keep it like really casual and often is our personal technique.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense.
We do a lot of like work in agile projects, so rather than focusing on the entire thing all at once, we kind of bite off a little batch of feature set that we want to tackle in this 2 weeks. And that works really well, and we have like a daily stand-up, and sometimes they're quick. They're like 2 minutes. Everyone just kind of goes around and says what they did yesterday, what they're going to do today, and if they have any blockers or problems like holding up their work. And sometimes those end up being really long discussions that are necessary, and it's great to like have that daily regular time where we're all kind of talking to work through that. And then at the end of the sprint, you kind of just demo everything you did in that 2 weeks, and then you kind of move on to the next batch.
Yeah, that makes sense. So we are actually coming to, so it's 9:07. Probably talked everybody's ear off to some degree, but this has been really quite interesting for us. Kat, I don't know if anybody wants to stay on, you know, the chat or to talk. I don't know if there's a way to allow people to do that, but.
I think maybe if folks want to connect with each other, feel free to drop your email or your Instagram handle or your LinkedIn or however you want to connect with each other. And maybe as we wrap up, feel free to share that information in the chat, take a screenshot of you know, other folks' info, and then maybe we can kind of keep the conversation going. I know we talked about having potentially a hashtag, so if folks want to carry on the conversation, feel free to hashtag blurred lines, and you can carry it on. We'll probably have some posts on Instagram and whatnot. Thank you, Scott.
Oh, sorry. I'll send it to all panelists.
Oh, yeah, thank you. But I think aside from that, I mean, thank you everyone for your fabulous questions, and I know it was great to dig in a little bit deeper into some of what we heard tonight. But I want to hand it over to Romina to say a few words and kind of wrap us up for the evening. But thank you, everyone.
Thank you, Kat. Thank you, everyone. Thank you to our panelists. You guys were amazing, inspiring, and we love learning from each other. This was really fun. I want to say it was really great to collaborate. COVID has been hard, and we are trying to stay inspired and learn from each other. So we really appreciate all of you guys who showed up. We hope that we can do more of these, and you know, we'll see what we learn and what we can share with each other next time.
Absolutely.
Thank you, everyone.
Yeah, thanks everyone again for your insights, and And I might leave the chat up for a few more minutes, but I will liberate all of our panelists and speakers and everyone from the need to remain on video any longer. But thank you again to everybody involved, and it has been a fantastic experience. So we will send out a link to the recording of the video. It may take us a day or two to process. But if you were not able to catch the entire event, or if you have folks who were interested and didn't get a chance to see it, you are more than welcome to share that with them. And so we'll have that coming out in the next couple of days. Oh, awesome. It looks like Scott pointed out, if you click the 3 dots in the chat, you can actually save the chat. So if there's contact info there that you would like to save, or links to all of the various cool things that everyone has shared this evening, feel free to save that chat. So I'll give everyone a couple of minutes to get that info in there before I shut the show down. But yeah, so hopefully this was a good experience to kind of mix together a little bit of the social aspect with getting to hear from some wonderful speakers. So hopefully we'll have some more Ohio collaborations coming up in the near future. And yes, thank you, Jen. Definitely remember to vote, everybody. Yeah, anybody else have any closing words?
Just thank you all so much. I mean, this has really been exciting. I know when we had planned this event, we were thinking, oh, you know, we might get 20 or 30 people kind of sign up for this, and to have over 300 and over 150 or so just show up for this evening, I think that was way more than, you know, we were expecting, and very delighted to have all of you guys attend and join in. So really, really awesome. Again, shout out to everybody who was involved in helping put this event together. You know, the IDC, again, is a super crazy, compact bit of condensed information. Check that out. Definitely see you guys all at Women in Design next week already. It's October. It's crazy how time flies when you're having fun during COVID. It's seriously really fun. Yeah. Nick, Jen, fill in for Jon last minute. Man, that's got to be something to get that call real quick.
No pressure, Jon. Sorry, you did great.
Yeah.
Great job.
I overdid all right. It was a last minute email from Nicole, so.
Yeah. Awesome. All right, guys. All right. I think we're going to call it a night. Thanks, everyone, for your time. Have a great evening, and we'll see you at the next event.
Thanks, guys.
Yeah.
Bye.